You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and I've mentioned before on the podcast that we have themes that seem to run through the storylines here. I bring you stories twice a week, and it's just weird how the universe presents things. Often it's in threes, and today that is happening again. So consider this your warning. Suicide is going to be mentioned respectfully, but also often in today's episode. First, we're headed to Oklahoma, where last week the Broken Arrow Police Department made this Facebook post. I'm going to read it directly. Here's how it goes. This afternoon, shortly after 4 p.m., officers served a search warrant related to a missing person investigation involving 20-year-old Alyssa Shippy. Her disappearance was recently reported to our department by an out-of-state relative. Upon entering the residence, officers discovered an adult male with apparent self-inflicted gunshot wounds, plural, as well as a juvenile male and a dog who were both dead. Due to the condition of the home, investigators have since located an additional body believed to be an adult female. At this time, the identity of the woman has not been confirmed. The medical examiner will conduct a full investigation to make a positive identification. We are withholding all names pending next of kin notification. There is no ongoing threat to the community. Okay, are you left with as many questions as I am? Who's Alyssa? Why is the home so destroyed they took a minute to find the deceased female, presumably Alyssa? And what is the state of her body that it's going to take a moment for the coroner to make an identification? Who's the boy? And here's a weird question. It seems the adult male suffered multiple self-inflicted wounds, not just one. So let's get some of the answers. 58-year-old Rodney Shippy is the father to 10-year-old Logan Shippy and 20-year-old Alyssa Shippy. It is reported that Alyssa had stopped communicating with relatives back in November, more than 6 months ago. When relatives couldn't get her to answer, or I'm just guessing they couldn't also get Rodney to answer, they requested the welfare check on Alyssa. When police arrived, they found the home nearly inhabitable. News outlets published a photo of the home from the exterior, and I'm just going to be honest here, it doesn't look that bad. The garage door looks a little askew. There are 2 trash receptacles there near the garage. There is one lone lawn chair that sits in front of the garage, and a dead either bush or small tree is in the front yard. But the lawn isn't that overgrown, and the shingles look pretty okay. And there's no yard trash, and the windows are all intact. But the inside was a different story. Trash covered the floor of the home. There were wrappers and toys and clothes and shoes. The home was deemed not suitable for children, and police say there was no running water present. And yes, if you inferred that Alyssa's body was badly decomposed and possibly hidden under junk, I think it's probably a safe inference. The Broken Arrow Sentinel verified that it took a bit for investigators to locate Alyssa within the muck of the home. And with the discovery of the dead bodies of Alyssa, Logan, the family dog, and of course Rodney, it was the end of a horrific streak of loss for the family that began clear back in August of 2022. Now, it was August 17th to be exact. That's when 41-year-old Lisa Shippy died by suicide. Lisa is Rodney's wife and the mother to Logan and Alyssa. Lisa was found dead in the home in Broken Arrow. And then, 5 months later, in January of 2023, Lisa's stepdad, Kenneth Carpenter, murdered Lisa's mom, Diane. Kenneth stabbed the 56-year-old woman to death. Okay, so back in 2023, whatever was happening between Kenneth and Diane was public, or at least open enough that the family members were worried enough about Diane to drive to the Carpenter home. When they arrived, they found the bloody scene and called emergency responders. That 911 call led to a 4-hour standoff between Kenneth and law enforcement. The standoff ended with Kenneth shooting himself and ending his life. Now, if you're keeping score here, we have Lisa, the mother of Alyssa and Logan, killing herself. Then Lisa's mom and stepdad dying in a murder-suicide, And the tragedies culminated in Lisa's husband, Rodney, killing both of their children and the family dog before killing himself last week. It has been reported that Rodney was trying to hold the family together, but back in January, Rodney was informed the Shippy home was about to be taken by the bank. Rodney hadn't been keeping up with the mortgage, and U.S. Bank National Association had filed a foreclosure notice for the $135,000 in unpaid principal. The court had given Rodney until June to file an answer to the court notice. Rodney and Lisa had bought the home together in 2021. Then the tragedy started in 2022. The bank foreclosure might provide us with an idea of why Rodney did what he did, but the foreclosure doesn't explain a 20-year-old Alyssa last being seen in November of last year. And context clues tell us her body is so decomposed that the coroner's office has still not publicly said it is Alyssa, but Alyssa's aunt told a local TV affiliate that it absolutely is Alyssa. Now, the Broken Arrow Sentinel went on to explain that the Shippy family isn't the only murder-suicide in the last 3 years in Broken Arrow. In fact, you could call it an epidemic. In May of 2023, Philip Jason Hammock was accused of shooting his wife to death before unsuccessfully trying to take his own life. He ended up with a traumatic brain injury and was found last year to be incompetent to stand trial. Then on July 19th of 2024, 26-year-old Jacob Haas shot his brother, his grandfather, and his aunt to death before turning the gun on himself. A motive was never identified in the Haas shooting. 5 months earlier, in January of 2024, a 14-year-old girl and her 17-year-old brother were found dead in their family home. The girl was strangled to death. The boy had hung himself. And in October of 2023, 6 children ages 1 to 13 and 2 adults were found dead during a house fire. Everyone had died from gunshot wounds in that case, and authorities believed both of the parents planned the killings. Now, Oklahoma is trending in the wrong direction when it comes to domestic violence-related homicides. In 2023, 121 people were killed in DV incidents. That number may not sound like a lot, but when compared for overall population, it is very high. Oklahoma consistently ranks among the top 10 states for women murdered by men in single victim incidents. Now, in some of those years, Oklahoma was named number 2 in the nation. And one more tragic statistic. Approximately 49% of Oklahoma women and nearly 41% of Oklahoma men experience domestic violence in their lifetimes. These DV incidents include physical violence, rape, or stalking by an intimate partner. And the stats are among the highest in the nation. It's worth repeating. If you or someone you love is experiencing suicidal ideation, please call or text 988. Again, you can call or text 988. And also, since it is June, if you are a member of the LGBTQ youth community and you need help, you can contact the Trevor Project by texting the word START to 678-678. Now, this was such a heavy story. I'm so sorry that we even had to discuss those deaths and the horrible statistics. Like I said, we aren't done in this episode, but let me leave this story with this. Just take care of one another. And now a quick update to a death that was ruled a suicide back last summer. We covered this case with updates at least 3 times on Rise in Crime. And although this isn't an update to what some still feel was a criminal activity, I do believe it will be interesting to you. This is the case of Micah Miller. Clearly, this story is far more detailed than we have time for, but here's a quick refresher. After what some called grooming courtship and then a marriage with a 14-year age difference, 33-year-old Micah Miller and her pastor husband, John Paul Miller, had a very rough winter in 2024. She spent some time working on her mental health. He allegedly spent some time looking for another companion. But finally, on April 24th of last year, Micah served JP divorce papers. 3 days later, she left her Myrtle Beach home at about noon. Minutes after that, she purchased a gun at Dick's pawn shop. Later that afternoon, a fisherman reported hearing a woman crying and then hearing what he thought was a gunshot. Later after that, Micah was found dead with a handgun laying close by and also a Bible near her body. Now, JP created a whole bunch of hubbubaloo when just 12 hours after the death, he told the congregation that his wife had killed herself and that she was suffering from mental instability. The timing, the attitude, the public nature of the sermon, that really threw people, leaving many, including Micah's family, to question John Paul and whether he was involved in her death. Now, ultimately, her death was ruled a suicide, and John Paul was cleared when authorities said they had him on camera in Charleston attending a soccer tournament with another woman. Now, Micah's family was vocal in telling Micah's story, saying she was scared of JP, that he had placed a GPS tracker on her car and had sliced her tire with a razor blade. She allegedly had also warned them by saying, "If I end up with a bullet in my head, it was JP." Well, JP was suspended from his pastoral duties, and so he moved on and started his own church in another city. And he has moved on in other ways as well. So here's the update part. On Sunday, JP remarried. Now, that's not really that scandalous. It's been a year since Micah died. Who JP married is what has people all worked up. JP's new wife is Susie Skinner, a physical therapist who was religiously connected to JP. Susie was previously married to Chris Skinner, a quadriplegic Army veteran and a motivational speaker. He's also religious. Chris became paralyzed in 2000 when he was involved in a horrific car accident. Susie met Chris while he was rehabilitating. Totally makes sense. She's a physical therapist. The two then married in 2004. In 2021, Chris was found dead, still strapped into his wheelchair at the bottom of his community pool in Myrtle Beach. Now, initially, Chris's death was ruled accidental. Lots of talk about how he might have wheeled too close to the edge, despite the fact that he visited the pool regularly. But since all of the scrutiny on John Paul, Chris's death was again revisited because Chris believed clear back in 2021, before he died, that Susie and JP were messing around behind his and Micah's backs. 2 weeks before Chris supposedly accidentally drowned, he allegedly confronted JP about the potential affair. Then, Chris drowned, and JP officiated his funeral. 2 months ago, the investigation into Chris's untimely death was reopened. Apparently, there are some discrepancies in reports that have been filed by the coroner and the local police, and witness testimonies don't quite match up either. This all coincides with the FBI searching JP's home. Now, why they are searching the home hasn't been revealed, but the common denominators in the two deaths, one suicide and one accidental, are JP and Susie. And now they are married as of Sunday. Now, of course, JP continues to deny any connection to Chris's death or Micah's death, but he is now fighting 2 other lawsuits involving anonymous women who are claiming they were abused by JP in the past. And one more quick note about the wedding. JP's kids weren't there, but the video shows about 20-ish people in attendance as far as I can tell. So why weren't his kids there? Let me know what you think of this new wrinkle to an already permanently creased case. Now an update to a case that I followed over the weekend, and it's a tragic end with more patricide. Over the weekend, I saw reports that a father, 32-year-old Travis Decker, had taken his 3 daughters, 5-year-old Olivia, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 9-year-old Peyton, on an out-of-custody arrangement visit, meaning Travis didn't take them every other weekend overnight and Wednesday nights like, a typical custody arrangement would look. The newest arrangement between Travis and his ex-wife Whitney had him taking them for a few hours every other weekend, but his lack of steady home accommodations meant no overnight visits. Travis is a military veteran who was understood to be mostly homeless. Sometimes he would live at shelters and sometimes he would live at campgrounds. Now, the pre-arranged visit was intended to be only a few hours, but Travis did not return with his daughters, and law enforcement were notified by Whitney late Friday. However, they did not send out an Amber Alert. It seems authorities felt it was a custody issue and not an abduction in the traditional sense, whatever that means. So they opted for no Amber Alert and instead issued an endangered missing person alert. Okay, so what's the difference here? Well, in Washington, from what I can tell, the biggest difference in this situation would have been how the information was shared. An Amber Alert is shared with everyone through social media channels, digital billboards on the highway, emergency alerts to cell phones, and broadcast through the EAS system, which interrupts radio and television broadcasts. The endangered persons, well, that alert is only shared through media outlets who then can choose to forward the information. And the disappearance can be shared on law enforcement websites and social media channels. Now, I heard about these 3 young girls missing via a publicized crime story from a regional newspaper. Now, the 3 girls live in Wenatchee, Washington. On Monday afternoon, the 3 girls were found dead about 17 miles from their home in a Rock Island campground. In a press release Tuesday, Wenatchee Police Captain Brian Chance said Travis is former military with extensive training who may, quote, pose a significant risk if approached. Now, it is not known whether Travis is armed. A deputy located Decker's unoccupied vehicle, which is a white 2017 GMC Sierra pickup, at about 3:45 Monday afternoon. This was near that campground. Now, Captain Chance said the girls' bodies were discovered during a search of the immediate area within about 100 yards of the pickup. The police captain did not specify a cause of death, but it has been reported that it was brutal and that asphyxiation could be the cause. Travis is still on the run at the time that I took this podcast to production. He is 5 feet 8 inches tall with dark brown to kind of blackish hair, and he has brown eyes. He weighs about 190 pounds. He's also apparently fairly athletic. He wrestled in high school, so you're looking for more of a slim athletic build. He's not going to be pudgy per se. Now, I know I said that they didn't file an Amber Alert, and that has some people, well, pissed off, to be honest. I'll call it like I'm interpreting it. But I don't want that decision to only file an endangered missing persons case to make you think that law enforcement wasn't searching. The girls were determined to be missing on Friday night. Law enforcement had picked up his license plate on the automatic license plate reader on Friday afternoon at 5:41 p.m. So when they started going back and checking after they were reported missing, they went and did their due diligence and they could figure out where he was at on Friday. When they picked up that license plate, he was headed north away from Wenatchee. Now that gave law enforcement a place to at least focus their attention on Saturday and Sunday. A tip said they spotted the truck near Leavenworth. That city is between Wenatchee and the campground. So law enforcement then began searching the wooded areas near Leavenworth. Now, even though Travis was still at large on Monday, before the girls' bodies were found, authorities went ahead and filed the charge of first-degree custodial interference. Once the girls' bodies were found, they upped the charges to 3 counts of first-degree murder and kidnapping. Prior to the discovery of the bodies, their mother, Whitney, issued a plea to the public stating the following: I am concerned about the safety and well-being of my girls and their dad. This is an unimaginable situation. Unfortunately for Whitney, it became much, much worse with the discovery of her girls. Whitney had also told a local TV station that Travis had struggled with his mental health after leaving the military. Travis and Whitney were married for 7 years, but divorced several months back. She said when he picked up the girls on Friday, he was uncharacteristically quiet. She also told law enforcement that she had not experienced domestic violence during the marriage. Whitney said he would be controlling at times, but it was never really violent. All 3 girls attended Lincoln Elementary School, and the staff sent a heartbreaking email to the students' families and staff updating them on the murders. Counseling services were provided on Tuesday for children and staff. A GoFundMe has also been started for Whitney to cover funeral costs and potential legal entanglements. I'll keep you updated on this case. All right, let the updates continue. Guess who got himself caught? No, it's not the disgraced police chief, Grant Hardin, out of Arkansas. I brought you that story a while back. And it's not the remaining 2 prison escapees out of New Orleans, although I do have an update to that case later in the podcast. Texas law enforcement was the one who grabbed their fugitive on the run. Remember Trevor Mcuan? He's the man who shot his neighbor, Aaron Martinez, more than 15 times, killing him over a long-standing neighbor feud. Authorities believe it was a racist murder, Mcuan being white and Martinez being Hispanic. Mcuan was captured after a standoff with authorities following the shooting. He was released on bail despite being charged with murder. He violated those bail terms and was reincarcerated, but was released once again after posting a $2 million bond. The day that Trevor Mcuan fled authorities, he was scheduled to begin his capital murder trial. But instead of showing up at the courthouse, he got up early, allegedly starting his barn on fire, and then he fled the area. That was nearly 1 month ago. And on Sunday evening, Trevor Mcuan was nabbed by authorities. He was barefoot and muddy. Well, why was he muddy? Because he was hiding under his grandmother's house. After a month on the run, Sheriff Brian Beavers said law enforcement received a tip that Trevor was hiding under the house. Armed with that info, authorities secured a search warrant. Then on Sunday at 11 p.m., about 30 law enforcement officials from local, state, and federal agencies converged on Trevor's grandmother's home. It did take hours, but eventually, an officer pulled Trevor out of the small hole cut in the floor of his grandmother's closet. Officers used extended conversations and tear gas to coax Trevor from the hole. Trevor was taken back to jail, and I'm guessing bail is not in his future. He has added arson to his long list of charges that includes capital murder for Aaron Martinez. His trial has been reset for August. Law enforcement are continuing to investigate and determine potential charges for those who aided Trevor in his nearly 1 month-long run from the law. Of course, I'm going to watch this trial. I'll keep you updated after that potential start in August. And like I said, an update to the New Orleans prison escape. Remember, last month, 10 men escaped the prison by cutting a hole in the wall behind the toilet sink stainless steel combo unit. And they ran into the courtyard and out of a loading dock area and then escaped from the prison. Now, 8 of the 10 have been captured. Antoine Massey, he's one of the 2 prisoners left on the run. Well, he has apparently uploaded a pair of 10-minute long videos to Instagram. In the videos, he claims he was, quote, let out of prison and that he didn't escape. Now, the videos have been deleted, but it's all over the internet if you want to go find it. Antoine is reported to have said that he left the jail because the authorities were trying to give him a life sentence in both parishes for something that he did not do. Antoine has been charged with kidnapping and rape. Now, in the video, Antoine, or the man believed to be Antoine, we've got to put that out there because they don't know for sure that it's him, but they really do think it is him. So Antoine is sitting on a kitchen stool and speaking directly into the camera. The kitchen's tidy and a little bit newer. And remember, back to when I told you this story almost 3 weeks ago, I mentioned in that video that the New Orleans Parish Sheriff, Susan Hudson, was in a hotly contested sheriff's race and that this prison break was being used against her in the campaign process. Now, her opponent was saying the faulty locks in the prison, along with the understaffing of the prison, were Sheriff Hudson's fault. Well, since that podcast nearly 3 weeks ago, Sheriff Hudson has suspended her campaign. She said she is working on, quote, restoring the public's trust. At least 15 people have been charged with helping the 10 men either during or after their escape from the prison. One of the main helpers is alleged to be Sterling Williams. He is a jail maintenance worker who officials accused last month of shutting off the water to a jail cell where the men removed that toilet sink combo and climbed through the hole. Sterling Williams, well, he has a different story. He says he was threatened with his life, that if he didn't do the things that they're accusing him of doing, like shutting off the water, then he would be killed. Now, the alleged Antoine addressed that in his video, and he said he absolutely didn't threaten Sterling's life. Antoine, or the alleged Antoine, then went on to accuse prison officials of being crooked and racist. Antoine in the video asks for help, specifically from President Trump, Kim Kardashian, and several music artists. Now, a local news station, WVUE, aired an interview with Antoine's pastor, where the pastor begged Antoine to turn himself in, especially if he cares about his family. I'll keep you updated on this prison escapee. When I took the podcast to production, Antoine was still on the run. Now, just a quick look at 2 comments from Monday's episode. Adrian asked a question about the pool cover that was hiding the dead body in the former detective's outdoor pool. This was in Long Island. She asked, do people really not go in the backyard all winter long? Now, I obviously can't answer for everyone, but I can tell you, I don't. In Idaho, we have 3 to 4 feet of snow in the backyard during the winter, and I just don't have kids that are in the home, so they wouldn't be playing out there in the snow. Now, I do have a hot tub in the backyard, but it has an enclosure mostly surrounding it, so I wouldn't see into the pool if I had one. Also, the pictures of the house make it look like the pool cover was not transparent. The former detective is old enough that he probably doesn't go back there unless he is getting the property ready for the summer. And I'm also not sure the young man's body was floating by this time in the story. He had been submerged and dead for several months. And I'm not a pathologist, but the body might be on the bottom of the pool. I'm also just assuming the pool was full of water. Now, I guess it could not be full of water, but I think if he died in the pool, that would have had to have been part of the death, that he drowned and it was too cold. Like they said, he died from hypothermia. So we're making a lot of assumptions here. I do believe there was water in the pool. Now, a couple of you asked for updates on my little geriatric puppy, Q. Q is having a good week this week. I can always tell how good of a week she's having depending upon kind of how saucy she is acting. And the saucier the puppy, the better the week. So I'm having to now take her food upstairs to my primary bedroom. It's like her safe space. And so she eats better there because I think she thinks I'm staying in for the night if I take the food to my bedroom. So when I do that, she eats better, which means she's a little bit saucier and happier. And now to one final comment from Patty. Patty, you're a really good child. Patty said she listens while caring for her parents. We need more Patties in this world. All right, that's your Thursday episode of Rise in Crime. This is a shared experience, so thank you for sharing the podcast or the YouTube episode. Please send it to a friend. That's how we grow here. And a couple of the cases were suggestions today, so thank you for sending those in. A little programming note, I am following a trial, so that should be over, and I will give you that update on Monday. We've got a couple of other things too, a couple of dead teenagers out of Arizona. I'm looking into that case as well, just to give you some highlights for what I'm researching. We love 5-star reviews and positive comments here at Oh No Media. Those podcasts and YouTube broadcasts are Into the Dark, Murder with My Husband, and of course, Rise in Crime. Thank you for being here with me. Join me again on Monday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.